Welcome, everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another identity conversation. And I've got with me Tom Livergood. And Tom and I have known each other for around 20 years or so when I first started coming to the United States and became a member of the Family Office Exchange. And Tom was one of the leaders of that organization. And today, he is the CEO and founder of the Family Wealth Alliance that has really been doing great work at bringing together multifamily offices, families, and really enhancing the experience for those groups, which is so important in the world we live in today, where a lot of wealth is changing hands, and there are many issues there. So. Welcome, Tom. It's great to be able to spend some time with you today.
Oh, Hugh, it's great to see you again. And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be included in this identity series. I think it's really cool that you're doing it, and bringing folks from different disciplines together. And I'm anxious to hear some of the other interviews. And I can only tell you that, I will try to stick to the truth and not kid around too much. But it's really fun to be with you. Thank you.
Well, it's fun doing these because everybody's got such a rich story, and I think that's probably the place to start with you. If you could just tell our listeners a little bit about your life story and your business life story as well, and how you got to founding the Family Wealth Alliance.
Well, as I tell people, Hugh, I first grew up in a family business, then I grew up in this business. So it really kind of in two parts, although not in equal year spans anymore. But I grew up in a third generation family business that my grandfather had started, he and his brother, my great uncle. It was started in 1937, and it was in central Illinois, and it was in the food and agribusiness business, country grain elevators, we called it. And so when I was in college, my second generation father and uncle decided to sell the business and didn't really consult my brother and cousins who were in it. And I got a phone call in college, and I'm in a fraternity and looking forward to the next party, et cetera. And little did I know the family dynamics going on then. And while the family patched back, it caused a lot of hardship in the way it was handled. Not that it wasn't a great business decision, but as you know, the family dynamics get intertwined in a lot of feelings. My brother and cousins went on in that same industry and did really well, but it really stuck to me with the stockbrokers getting a hold of the money and churning the accounts, and then it went into a local trust department when my father passed, and they invested in T-bonds and muni bonds, and it just didn't make any sense. So we wrestled that out of them. So growing up in a family business was terrific, but also from the outsider standpoint, maybe not what you would think when a family business is sold. So that started me on the career of really wanting to help families through different aspects of their lives on the financial side. So out of MBA school, I went with a mentor of mine and did financial planning. And we charged fees, we charged commissions. In 1980, that fee-based approach was there, but still pretty young. And so I started growing up as a financial advisor to other families, right? And about 10 years later, was recruited to the Harris Private Bank, and a whole new world, and saw what families would go through, got involved in actually the food and agribusiness group, but others in M&A, and also ran another national business for the Harris. But at the end of the day, I saw what families would go through just like mine, but they were much larger, and they would form what was called a family office. And I'd never heard that before. So Sarah Hamilton had left the Harris briefly before I was there and started Family Office Exchange. It's over 30 years old, and as you know, very well respected organization. And interestingly enough, I ended up being recruited to join Fox to start the MFO community at the beginning of the 2000s, and was really an interesting experience, and yet another national business that I helped start, and really learned and met a lot of wonderful people. And then in '03, I did a very financially ill-advised, crazy thing. I decided to start my own business, Family Wealth Alliance, and July 1st of this year, it'll be 18 years ago. And it was really with the mission of bringing together people that shared a core value, which is we place families first. And that core value still exists today. So we tend to attract and retain relationships that are givers, not takers, that are willing to have an abundance mentality, not a scarcity mentality. And so people are pretty surprised that amongst direct competitors, the amount of collaboration and sharing. But it's because they come in with that mindset, Hugh, of being givers first, and they have that abundance mentality and that core value that is shared of placing the interest of families first. So again, I grew up in a family business, and then I grew up in this business. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, so it's really your family business experience that's driven you along, isn't it, Tom? And I think lots of families have trouble on the exit. It's one thing starting a business, but actually selling out, and then everybody being kept happy. And as you said, there's lots of family dynamics, getting the right price, what happens to the money, what one's parents do with their, or grandparents do with their will, and all the trusts and things. It's certainly, it's complex, and it's a lot more than the money, but it seems like that, that experience is kept with you the whole time, and you built yourself up as a financial advisor. And in a way, you've innovated the industry, haven't you? Because it's gone from being commission-based to fee-based. And I think one thing you forgot to mention there is you led the formation of the Financial Planning Association and the CFP mark.
Yeah, that was something that I started in the local chapter of predecessor organization, IAFP, back in the mid-'80s. And, recruited members and did meetings and did there at the local level, and then moved on to advisory groups at the national level, and then was elected to the national board right before we did the merger, and the 30,000 member at the time FPA, Financial Planning Association, and then really got behind the CFP mark, and really proud of what we did. What was interesting, Hugh, is that was another experience at a national, international organization, right? And having networks of people all over. But also it taught me a lot about governance and getting members involved. And little did I know that I could use that at Fox and later at my organization. So, we hardly go to the bathroom without checking with our advisory board members or co-chairs and, our members across the country, and doing something. And before we do it, we consult with them. And while I lead the league of mistakes as a leader, I would have a lot more mistakes if we didn't consult with those who are most important, to hear their voice. It's really important.
But also, though, you are, through all that, in these various stages of your career, really you are a visionary leader that's led a lot of change. Well,
thank you. Someone once said that we have a sixth sense, that we can see around the corner and know where the puck is headed, and how do we predict all that? And to me, it's like Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, and what he talks about, the fact that in milliseconds we just have that sixth sense of what's going to happen. And we've been very fortunate to be able to pick up on a lot of trends, but it's really just about making observations, right? Not to equate myself, but Einstein did all those mind experiments, right? And he would think through his mind what was going on. with a light beam and all that. And I just think it comes natural to talk to leaders and really find out what's going on in their brains. And one question I always like to ask everyone is, what are your three major challenges? Because I think that really gets to the core, almost like a going down to the cortex and really finding out what a person is dealing with and why that is. And I find you get someone talking to you pretty completely when that happens.
And it's often, things might come up there that you wouldn't expect to come up from the person, because you might think they're all packaged up and progressing along pretty well. You can ask that question of a CEO or family business owner or any person, and you're going to get some pretty interesting responses. And they would be lying if they didn't have a challenge. I think. But something that's interesting that you said was, you're very visionary at, in picking up trends, and that's something that I heard there. And seems to me, Tom, you've been very good at identifying pretty big trends, almost jumping S-curve level type trends, but you've had the ability to influence the conversation. Notwithstanding governance, you've gone back to to governance boards or authorities to check in and get a sanity check as to whether to go forward. But you must be very good at influencing conversations on future trends to do what you've done.
Yeah, I got to tell you, a book that I read, Family Wealth, Keeping It in the Family by Jay Hughes. And I'm sure you know Jay, but I read that book when I was at Fox, and Family Wealth actually influenced me on the name of our organization. But as Jay wrote and described it to me later, is that, wealth in Europe in older times was really a wealthy man and woman were those who had their health, they had peace of mind, they had relationships in their families, and they passed those values on to the next generation, right? And a wealthy family over generations kept together. And so it wasn't about financial wealth. It was more the important things in life. And so to me, family wealth and the term was a no-brainer. That's what we were going to call our company, the Family Wealth Alliance. And so it wasn't family office. It wasn't wealth management. It was family wealth. And I think that's become a term of art. I think we've had an influence on what family wealth means. And we created the first ever published MFO standards in 2006 and dusted them off and revealed them last year in our fees and pricing study. And those have been, if you will, the standard bearer in the industry. When you call yourself something, you need to hold yourself and be accountable to certain standards. And so like the speed of light, it doesn't change. These standards will not change. And instantly enough, 15 years later, when we looked at the standards again, we didn't change anything in it other than the minimum net worth from 20 to 30 million. And that was an inflation adjustment only. So it was pretty cool. And we did that with an advisory group, of course.
But it's interesting that, 20 years ago, you went down this path and you were very intentional about defining family wealth and what that meant, because I know the conversations I had 20 years ago with people in this area that, you had to work very hard at getting them to understand that wealth was more than money. Whereas today, I think it's an easier conversation to have in families. They're looking to understand these other dimensions. And in a way, they've got to get them sorted out if they're going to keep their family together.
Yeah, I got to tell you, again, a physicist doesn't create new things. They observe and use what's already there, right? And so all we did was really observe, Hugh, what was going on 20 years ago, and then kept tracking it, right? And then by doing that, you can extrapolate out which could happen and what will happen. and yes, be an influencer on that. But predicting the future is really more about just observing what's there, and then molding it to maybe create by association, like Steve Jobs did at Apple. He just took other innovations and put them together, and stood on the shoulders of other innovators. And so when you're innovating, you're really just using the powers of observation and association, really.
But it's also it is also about leading a movement, and influencing the conversation, bringing passionate people along, getting them to talk about it.
You're really too kind. I really think it was already there, and you just had to put a name on it and be courageous enough to leap out in front for a while. It was a lot easier than you described. The work getting it done is not, and I think every entrepreneur like yourself knows that. So,
but Tom, I was getting into the picking trends, because I think that's something that I see is quite strong in you. When I look at your if we move along to this part, to your financial DNA discovery reports, and you, for our listeners, you're an influencer in style, and we've used that word a few times today, but that's because you are, I think, in your own right, regardless of what the report says. But you've got a take charge nature, which comes with that visionary and also very creative. That to me is someone that does pick future trends and has the courage to pursue them. But yeah. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to sort of to hear what you thought of financial DNA when you got your report back, and what it said to you, and in terms of the work.
I'm glad you brought that up. When I did take it, it was the most frustrating darn thing I'd ever filled out in my life, because there are all these choices that, I wanted to pick more than one, right? So
yeah,
it probably took me longer than most because I was more stubborn about it. So that was my first reaction to it. The second is that when the report came back, it was eerily spot on. So unless you're not honest with yourself, I don't think most people can be honest with themselves. It was just dead on. It was just, hit me right between the eyes. And then, as you know, we now will not bring on a new team member until we have profiled our finalist candidates. And we just did that 2 weeks ago with you, before we brought on our newest team member. We welcomed her this week. So it is really vital to the success of our team. And certainly we try to balance out people around that circle diagram you use. So it's been critical to our success, and we have the highest performing cohesive team we've ever had. And I know you and Leon know that.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's the fact that you're hiring to get differences. Different styles on the team, because if they're all exactly like Tom, well, you'll have a lot of the same strengths, but you'll have a lot of the same struggles, and there'll be some serious blind spots, right. And I think this is where this helps, but also it's not only just hiring and bringing on the different person, you've got to manage them as well. And that's really the holy grail of leadership, is being able to manage those differences, whether it's in your team, but also whether that's true in a family unit too. Being able for the family to be able to manage its differences and see them is vital to building that family wealth.
I think the interesting thing about, as you're getting me to reflect on this, Hugh, is it's a wonderful experience being an entrepreneur and a founding of a business. It's much more challenging to see that business go to the next level and to bring on people and letting them do it. and having the confidence to delegate to them. And as you know, as a business grows, you're still the founder, you're still the leader, but obviously you have to have some terrific teammates around you to scale it, make it consistent and deliverable. Otherwise, you never grow, which I think is difficult for any founder to do. And so I think my biggest challenge is to continue to really just grow as a person and have the same courage that I had and the same foolishness I had 18 years ago, right? And I think the biggest gift that we get in founding a company is that you really find out what you're made of. Through all the grueling years and the sleepless nights and the very scary times, and yet the giddy times and the wonderful, exciting times that you go through, you find out what you're made of. You find out whether you have the right stuff that you can really gut it through and take that business to the next level. And so while it's not as scary a time now going into the second stage and seeing your business grow, you still have to be courageous enough to believe in yourself that you can find others that will replicate that and to take it to the next level much better than you can.
Because that's a very big decision who you bring on, because
exactly
that while you need them to scale, they can very easily undo your brand in some way, disempower you, or cause problems and other sets of headaches. So it's a very key decision. Every hire is a key decision, I think, in building your brand.
Huge, which is why we rely on you guys so much. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very glad you feel like that you can. But also just going to the uniqueness of your brand, the Family Wealth Alliance, which, Tom, comes from you and in a way and your identity. And I know that you curate a great experience for your clientele, the multifamily offices and the families. But can you tell me a little bit more about the uniqueness of that experience that you're curating for them?
Well, first, it bears out of respect. It bears out of respect for the time that our members and constituent base will lend to us. And that tells us that we are relevant. When we're asked about who our competition is, I say we don't have competition that's really relevant other than that we continue to be relevant to our constituents, to our members. And if we have earned that relevance for them to return an email, a phone call, to come to an event, to renew their membership, to fill out that research report, to listen to our on-demands, to come to our events, that's because we're relevant, that we keep being relevant to them. And so our experience is all based on being relevant and out of respect for their ROI. Because if we cannot continue to raise the bar and deliver more relevant experiences for them lending their time to us, then we no longer exist. And so we have to win that over all the time. And it's out of that respect that we deliver a truly unique, curated, and safe environment for them they can have an experience. So when they come to our fall forum, we give them a dance card, and there's 6 names on it. There's 2 names of people who I think they could do business with. There's 2 names of who I think they could help, and 2 people who I just think could be fascinating people for them to know. And everyone gets a dance card. Everyone's in a peer group. Everyone's in a dine around that night. And so it's a cross between a meeting and a wedding. And so what we've had to do in pivoting over the COVID experience is try to capture that in a bottle, but in a virtual way. And ironically, COVID made us more scalable and more relevant than ever. and we're having a record year this year. So to answer your question, the member and community experience within the Alliance, I believe, is unique. It's because it's born out of respect, and it's born out of the fact that we need to be relevant to them each and every time.
And Tom, does the relevance come from, the research that you do and helping these leaders that you're bringing to the community meetings that you run, the roundtables and other community experiences? Does it come from the fact that you use the research to identify trends that they may not otherwise know about, and so that's really what they're hanging for, and then they can come and discuss it in a safe way with you?
Exactly. And let's face it, this is a very, very tough business because they're serving the wealthiest families on the planet, right? And these are very complex needs, and these are very high demand client situations, and they're dealing the gamut of service offerings. It's not just managing the money, it's managing their family wealth in the broadest sense that we talked about. And so they need to be on the top of their game. And so our research really is holding up a mirror and reflecting the many voices of their peers. They don't want to come hear us. They want to talk to them. They want to talk to their peers when they come to the event. So we're just setting up the experience, whether it be through our research, our on-demand videos, our written materials, our roundtables, and our events. It's all around. It's all about them. We're the advisor to the advisor. And many times they don't have anyone else to talk to, but they're sure anxious to talk to their peers, and we curate that.
Yeah, so you curate the safe conversations with their peers. I imagine it's very confidential. It should be, and but you're also baking into that the trends, and you're using your sixth sense to identify those trends out of the research.
Right. Yeah, we are.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the power of it. They're not going to get access to those trends anywhere else. You're not, rehashing somebody else's research report. This is your stuff, and your sixth sense, or what I call third eye, is all over what they get. That's
thank you.
That's the magic.
Yeah.
But I think that comes to my question about your identity in terms of how you want to be remembered to your clientele, to these special leaders family leaders that you're bringing and advisors that you're bringing to your meetings.
I think that the legacy is really that we've created a special place that our members can come to share amongst one another. They're really driven and motivated to better serve their clients and to run a better business and have a sustainable business so that they can have sustainable families. The best performing families on the planet, Hugh, are the ones who sustain themselves through generations and keep those generational values together, which is exactly what Jay Hughes talked about in his book, Family Wealth. And that's really what this is about. And so if we have played a part in helping these firms be more sustainable and better serve their clients, then we've maintained our core value of placing families first. And that gives me great pleasure to be able to have contributed in the way we have to this.
Well, it's a very big contribution.
Well, thank you. Go ahead.
No, I was just for me, listening to you today, Tom, to me, what you brought out is your ability to capture the trends and then create the safe place for the families to discuss, the families and their advisors to discuss them so that they can be sustainable, to create that sustainable wealth in the family, and that for everyone to realize it's not just about money as such. It's all the other wealth factors that are out there, the non-financial pillars of wealth, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, thank you. You said you would ask me about any final points or tips or anything like that. I thought about that a little bit, and there'd be two things that I would suggest. One is know what business you're in, but more importantly, know what business you're not in.
Yeah.
And have the clarity to know when to say no. Because I think many businesses get way too wide and only an inch thick, and they don't stick to what they're really, really good at. And so I believe that the biggest challenge we face as a business is sorting through all the opportunities and priorities and being able to say no to 80% or 90% of them and focus on what we do best. And that's very difficult because I am not wired to be focused. I come across very disciplined and focused, but I'm not wired to be that way. But the second is that once you have those priorities, you've got to have the courage to carry through on them. And I just think that a lot of people in business don't have the courage to do that. And I'm thankful, whether it's sometimes reckless abandon or whether it's courage to forge through, is to go with your gut, trust your instincts, and really believe it before anyone else sees it, because then they'll see it if it's really meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's a very important message for any entrepreneur, CEO, entrepreneur, leader, family leader to know, particularly if you've got a business, is come back to what's the original purpose for setting up the business, what's the niche that you're going to own, and stick with it and not get too far off it, because that's what will get you into trouble. And I've had to deal with that myself along the way. In even though we're in human behavior, and you can say that's narrow, it's very broad, and that's where we've brought ourselves back to behavior and money insights, because that is still very niche, even 20 years later. Although really, to your point earlier, it's been something that's been dealt with for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and it's sitting right under our nose. It's there for someone to capture. So I think we've both, in a way, Tom, done a good job with that, and keeping keeping ourselves grounded in the end on conquering our niches.
Well, you and I were fortunate to meet each other when you started your business, and a year later I started mine. And it's incredible over the last 20 years how many people have been fortunate to know, like you, Hugh, that have persevered and trusted their instincts. So.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that, and I've really enjoyed spending time with you today, Tom.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Thanks for having me.